Hello, welcome. How are you, everyone? Thank you for joining. We're going to be starting a new chapter today. Anyone wants to volunteer to turn on their camera so I won't be alone? My kids tell me, Ima, you're still on Zoom. Isn't it hard for you that you don't get to see people? I say yes. But we have the advantage of not having to come out of the house. Wait a couple more minutes. And if you could turn on your cameras in the meantime, thank you, Janet. That's a huge help. I get to see your face. That's so nice. Okay, so today we're going to start a new chapter, Understanding Your Spouse. We're going to do the first part of it, which is learn to understand your spouse's unique reactions. The next part will be see things from your spouse's point of view, to do chesed, to prevent distress and pain, and to avoid quarrels. Then it will be listen to understand, then ask the right questions, then personality differences make a major difference, role reversal, and the last part will be make it easier for your spouse to understand you. So Bezat Hashem, tonight we're going to start with the first part, which is learn to understand your spouse's unique reactions. So Rav Grozhinsky, who was the mashgiach of Slobodka, he used to elaborate on the theme that the only way to fulfill the mitzvah of interacting with another person with love and care, that the Torah obligates is to know this individual's unique wants, needs, and desires. If you really want to be Yotze de Chova, to fulfill the Torah's obligation of interacting properly, you cannot do it unless you understand the person, the other person. Because being nice on my terms doesn't necessarily make the other person feel good. So before we explain more, I want to give some very basic examples, okay? If I don't like chocolate and I'm being offered by my husband, would you like to have chocolate? Because he likes chocolate, let's say. And every time that he wants to be nice, he would say, would you like chocolate? What do you think a woman would feel if her husband, after being married for a while, still is offering chocolate when he knows that she doesn't like chocolate? Or even worse, if she's allergic to chocolate. Does that feel like being loved? Absolutely not. So that was a very good extreme example. When we live together, we're supposed to get to know what the other person really likes, what the other person is really like, what the other person has difficulty with, what the other person is allergic to, not only in food, but sometimes we're allergic to some sentences, to some words, to some reactions. That is what getting to know our spouse means. And loving our spouse is paying attention and knowing and reacting according to really what our spouse is all about. So, the Torah obligation is to understand what they are, and only by this means one can love and respect one's spouse properly. Without really knowing what the likes and dislikes and what their natures are and what they grew up, people grow up in different homes, and depending on what you were raised as being important, what you were raised as a sign of affection, all that makes a huge difference. So if we really want to love, we have to understand what's love in our spouse's language. Always keep in mind that the only one whose needs, patterns, and reactions really count in your life are that of the individual to whom you're married. Sometimes we go the extra mile to be nice to a certain friend, or even as a great chesed to the widow down the block. But we don't do the extra effort of understanding the needs of our spouse. And that is super important. I think I shared with you this story before. I'll share it again. In the Lakewood Yeshiva, when Rabbi Aaron started the yeshiva many, many years ago, there was the nephew of the Chafetz Chaim, who was a very chashuv, very big Talmid Chacham, who was learning in that college. But Rabbi Aaron Kotler, the Rosh Yeshiva, had seen something interesting. This big chashuv avrech would not show up in the morning for prayer on time. He would be late or not show up. So one time he asked him, he said, I would like to know, what is it? It's not befitting to a person on your caliber not to be here for davening. So The young man says, you know, there is a woman in our town that she has a bunch of little children, and it's very hard for her in the mornings to do it all by herself. So I help her. And Rav Aaron says to him, what? We have a widow in our town. Lakewood back then used to be a tiny place. They didn't even have a Jewish school. He says, what? We have a widow in our town and I did not know about? And the young fellow says, why does it need to be a widow? It's my wife. If it was a widow, I would run to help and I would be considered the biggest Baal Chesed. And to help your wife is less of a chesed? What's the difference? Why does it need to be somebody down the block that's alone? Why can't it be our own spouse that we are considerate to and we pay attention to their needs and take care of their needs? So this is something extremely important that we really have to make it our duty to have that sensitivity, to learn what my spouse really likes. What insult my spouse? Maybe he doesn't say anything. Maybe she never comments. But you see her eyes becoming sad. Try to understand it. Try to see what it is to make each other happier. The person you're married to, the person you married is not your father, is not your mother, is not your brother, not your sister, not your best friend. And therefore, you cannot compare them. Many times we say, well, I'm not used to this. Guess what? You're not used to it. Go figure it out. Because that's the person you married. It's very easy to come to our spouse and say, you have to change according to what I'm used to. But people cannot change. Your spouse will be your spouse. This is who he is. He cannot fake it. And it is for the spouse to get to learn, to understand, to recognize, and react to the spouse according to what their needs and desires and etc. Okay, just like anything else in life, we have to learn who the other person is. And I'm not saying that that means that if I have to get to know my husband, that means I need to change. No, I can be myself. My reactions, my behavior towards my husband should be in a way that's pleasing to him. He should get to know me, and his behavior towards me should be in the way that makes me feel good. Is that understood? Is that clear? Okay. And therefore, we cannot say, oh, I'm not used to it. You should have thought about it before you got married. And you know what? It's very interesting because many times people say, if I would have known, I wouldn't have married. Guess what? When it's time for your children to get married, and you see how difficult it is to find someone, and you're willing to go to cut many corners and round them a little bit, because you see that it's not easy. And there is so many things that you have to say, come on, this is something we can live with. So let's not forget that about our own spouse. Because if with our children, we see that if we're going to wait to find Mr. Perfect or Mrs. Perfect, it might never happen. Because guess what? Even the ones that we think they're perfect, because we don't know them yet, they might say no to us. And then what? So we have to learn to live with the people that somehow we end up married to. And to think that I should have said no, or I could have waited and found someone else, it's not realistic. Because the reality is, look how many people are stuck because that's the way they thought it would be. Obviously, I'm not saying that we should marry someone that we know we will be miserable with, or that we should let our children get married to someone that they're going to be suffering with. No, I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is that if we are not going to make adjustments, even if we marry the nicest person in the planet, we're going to be miserable. Even if we marry the nicest person in the planet, if we are not going to make adjustment and try to understand their spouse, we are going to be miserable at the end of the day, and we will make our spouse miserable too. Okay, so not only our spouse is not someone that we grew up with and is different than the people we grew up with, also we change every day. We have different moods. We change a little bit. There's so many people, miskin, my heart goes out for them, that their spouse becomes more observant, or less observant, or they become vegetarians, or they become, I don't know, they change. They change. They suddenly change. And the one says, but you're not the person who I married. But guess what? We all change. So some people change in things that are less accepted to change. And there are certain things that people don't notice so much. And then there are couples that when one changes, the other one goes along nicely. And therefore there is no so much friction, because they communicate more. They want to please each other. So instead of fighting each change and objecting it, they say, wow, that's so nice, let me see. And by saying, let me see, this is so nice, I want to learn too. Then when one says, oh, but that's too hard for us now, the other one will accept. But when there is resistance, so there is friction, and so on. So it depends so much on how much we're there to please and to want to understand, and how much less friction there will be, and how much more pleasant the relationship will become. Now, since each individual on the planet is unique and different, no book can tell you exactly how to act with a specific person. Some people come, they go for help, for advice, and they say, tell me what to do. And there is no way to tell them what to do, because it's moment by moment, it's day by day, it's individual by individual, it's situation by situation. And we have to become more sensitive, more aware, to get to know our spouse and to honestly want our spouse to be happy, and to want to be the one that makes our spouse happy. So when you hear general ideas about marriage, realize that they could be true for many people, but whether or not they're going to be true for you will be dependent on your unique personality and that of your spouse. So this is something that it's very important to understand, that we cannot open a book and say, okay, so from now on, you want your husband to be happy? Make sure that when he walks in the door, dinner is served on the table. Maybe your husband likes to come home and take a shower first. And he's not going to be happy at all if supper will get cold. Maybe he prefers leave me alone. You eat your dinner, don't wait for me, puts me under pressure. I'll come, I'll put it in the microwave and sit and just come sit next to me and that's enough. I don't want you to wait for me because that puts a lot of pressure on me. Every relationship, every couple is different depending on the situation, on their personality, on their lifestyle, on how many kids there is currently in the house, and so many other things. And therefore, there is no book or no one that can tell you what to do exactly. And that's why we have to use our sechel, our minds, our brains that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us, and to really want to be sensitive, to really want to understand our spouse, to really want to be the ones who make him happy. I have a very good friend. She was my neighbor for many years. And her father was the Rosh Yeshiva, the Menahel of the high school in Israel. So she could have gotten the best boy, whoever they wanted, they could have, because they were beautiful family, beautiful girls. Anyway, so she dated a few boys. And then the one she ended up marrying is a very nice man, but he was much shorter than her and, not as loud personality. And she told me the reason she married him is because when she saw him little like that, and she's much taller, she wanted to be the one to take care of him. Look how HaKadosh Baruch Hu puts ideas in people's heads, but I will never forget that. And they have such a beautiful, beautiful family, such a beautiful marriage. It never changed. She wanted to be the one to make him happy. How beautiful is that? What a beautiful marriage, what a beautiful relationship when a couple gets married, because I want to be the one to give you pleasure, to make you happy. Because you're just cute and I love you and I want to make you happy. When we come with that attitude towards a marriage, there is very little chance that it wouldn't be a beautiful relationship. There is very little chance. It must be that the other one is really nasty to turn it the other way. So how can you learn to interact at the most optimum level with the individual whom you're married? The answer is, he or she will teach you if you keep your eyes and ears open. All you need to do is keep your eyes and ears open, and I would add your heart to pay attention. There are some men that tell their wives, so tell me what you want. So tell me what you want. She told him 1,000,000 times, 1,000,001. What? So when he asks, she doesn't want to answer because what's the point? If when I tell you, you don't hear. Now that you're asking, this is the time that you want me to say it again and again for you to say, and what do you mean? If you really want to know, pay attention. You will know. Learn from every interaction which words and actions need to be increased and which need to be decreased or eliminated. Pay attention. What makes your spouse sad? What makes them become quiet? Some people don't pay attention and they repeat the same thing again and again and again until the other ones start yelling and screaming and they say, why do you always yell and scream? because when quietly you were told, okay, enough, you didn't hear. And then you were told, okay, please stop, and you did not hear. And you only heard when the other one started screaming and yelling. That was the first time that you heard the please stop. The spouse should see it even before the other one says it. They should look in the eyes and see the sadness, the disappointment, and not say it again. And then the spouse doesn't have to yell and scream and cry and whatever it gets to. Not because something doesn't make sense to me, that makes it right. People are different. For instance, the need for space and boundaries, it differs very much between people. Some people have a strong need to share their experiences and feelings. Others have a great need for privacy. For example, asking your spouse, "Where are you going?" can be viewed as both a normal question and an expression of concern. Yet others, however, have a great need for the independence and freedom and consider this as a controlling question. When are you coming back? Ooh, when I tell my boys, when are you coming back, my teenagers? I'm not allowed to ask, when are you coming back? I'm not a little kid anymore. You have to trust me. It's not that I don't trust you. I just want to have an idea of when to call the police if you don't come back. That's all. Why are you getting so nervous? But they don't like it. Okay. So what does the spouse consider? You know, there are some ladies that if their husband comes home and says, "So what did you do today?" They hear, "You wasted the whole day, you did nothing." And other ladies, their husband comes and he doesn't say, and she said, "You don't even care what I did the whole day." So the same exact question can be a sign of love and affection and care. And to the other one, it could be, there are people that call it abuse and control, and you name it, what the other one considers love and affection and care. So is there the right one and the wrong one? No, there isn't. It's not right and wrong. It's people are different. And that's why he writes here so beautifully, Rabbi Pliskin. No book can tell you exactly what to do, because it depends on who you are, what exactly your spouse is like, and what the chemical reaction is. And you have to be sensitive and notice that chemical reaction and not ignore it, and see what turns on what. Someone who grew up in a happy family, where both the father and mother cared deeply about each other, and in which each of their children was treasured, has a very different emotional history than someone who grew up in a family torn with strife, where anger, quarrels, insults were a daily occurrence, frustration and rage, left over from childhood, may affect the individual present level of frustration and anger. So it also depends a lot on what type of a home us or our spouse was raised in. A woman that was raised in a home where the mother always complained about the father, she may not have so much trust in her husband because she was not taught to trust the husband. a man that grew up in a house where his mother never made any decisions, didn't know anything about the business, might have a hard time if his wife starts asking him questions. And again, there is no right or wrong. There is no right or wrong. There is, you have to understand who he is, who you are, and be sensitive and not say the wrong things at the wrong time, because it's not going to be good. Does that mean that a woman who wants to know what's on her name deserves to know it? Of course. Does that mean she has to curse him if he doesn't? No. She has to figure out the right way to get to the right place in their life. Whether it's going to speak to a Rav, whether it's sitting down with him and explaining to him very sweetly that we have to do things differently because, so there is no right and no wrong, but there is the wrong way of doing things or saying things. There are many ladies who are perfectly happy to be taken care of and not to have to deal with paying the bills or know where the money is coming from. As long as whatever they wish they get, they're fine. And there are other ladies that they don't want to get everything they wish for. They want to know every penny where it's coming and going. And then they'll squeeze themselves because how could you spend? We cannot spend. Her husband wants to spend and she doesn't want to spend because whatever. People are different. And again, there is no right or wrong. They have to find each other. And remember that the goal is to live their life besimcha. Let's not forget that we don't know what's in the future. We do know what's today. So let's make sure that today is a happy day with Shalom. Especially when we have children at home, the money that you save for later on in life is not as valuable as the peace and Shalom Bayit that you saved for the children to take with them. I don't know if I'm explaining this clearly enough. We could have money for the children to take with them when they grow up, or we could give them a home that they grew up with parents who respect each other and care for each other and love each other. And that's what they're going to take with them when they leave the house. And it's so much more valuable than numbers in the bank. So much more valuable. In the other hand, a person that grows up in a very cheerful, loving, easygoing family, they may be a lot less tolerant of any type of pain or anything that doesn't go the way they were hoping for. Because if their parents made everything sugar-coated for them, so then if things are not like that, it might be way too difficult for them in life. Again, is there right or wrong? No, there is no right or wrong. We just have to be realistic and know who we are living with and what their spouse is like. For some individuals, marriage is an escape from what was an intolerable situation, and they just wanted to get married to run away from home or from being single or whatever it is. While for others, it is a simcha to enter a relationship, the next stage in life, that they're looking towards building their family, building their home, based on the beautiful childhood that they had. Some people come from large families, others from small families. Some people are the only child. Some people come from homes that they hardly have bread on the table. Other comes from a lot of money, healthy, unhealthy. People come from very different places. And they are affected in different ways by similar experiences. So a person that came from no money or a person that comes from an unlimited budget, they may go in the street and they see an ice cream store and one says, oh, let's go get ice cream. And the one that grew up without money might say, no, each ice cream to buy it in the street cost you $6. We could go to the supermarket, buy for $4, buy a big box of ice cream, and we could have 3 times from it. Why? Because they grew up in different homes, in different situations. And the first one who wanted to take the spouse for ice cream says, what's $15 to spend on an outing? The other one didn't look at it as $15 to spend on an outing. It was money that we don't have, and therefore we cannot spend it. Is there a right or wrong? There is no right or wrong. They just have to learn how to communicate and how to, what makes the other one happy, and accept what the other one is offering you. So this girl or boy who spending $15 for ice cream in the street when they went out on a date was too much. If they're being told, but look, we were going to go out and it's only $15, that's what's going to make our date fun. Oh, $15 for a fun date. Yeah, that we could spend, we could afford that. When he or she was only thinking about the price for ice cream was too much. But when you say that price is to make it an outing, then it is worth it. So sometimes we need more explanation. Sometimes we need to present it as a present. This is a present from me. And again, this is an example. I hope you were able to somehow relate to the example in one way or another, but these are things that just because people come from different places, even if nothing is bad, it could be horrible. And that's why it's so important to open our minds, become more sensitive, become more open to understanding that the other one, our spouse, doesn't want to hurt us, doesn't want to bother us. But at the same time, we have to be open to accept, to want to please, to understand where the other one is coming from and try to give what makes the other one comfortable when it's time to give. When it's time to receive, yes, the spouse should do the same. But once what's important for both of them is to make each other comfortable, then that is a recipe for Shalom Bayit. So here he brings a cute story, a funny story, that there was a boy who was going to get married. So he was given advice, and he heard this advice from so many people. Girls don't like bugs. When they see a bug, they start shrieking. So if you want to be the man, whenever there is a bug, run and step on it. Okay. And then the second piece of advice is after your wife washes the floor, don't go until it's dry. It's going to make her super upset if you go on the floor when it's wet. Okay, so now there is a big question. What happens if the floor is wet and you see a bug on it? Do you let it stay there or do you still go and step on it and kill it? What's the answer? It depends whether it's Sunday or Monday. That's the answer, because it depends. Sometimes the bug scared her, so then she prefers that he should go and step on it. But the other time, no, your mother is coming to visit. Don't you understand that I can't have the floor not shining before your mother comes? How dare you go and step on the wet floor? And now not only that, you'll be able to see the mark of the dead bug. I would much rather wait till the bug goes away and the floor stays clean. But yesterday you told me you wanted me to step on it. Yeah, but today your mother is coming to visit. Go figure it out. So that's exactly the story of our life. And we have to know this, that on different days, not only we come from different backgrounds, we ourselves say complete opposites on different days of the week. And therefore, we shouldn't get upset. If you stepped on the bug on Monday, don't get upset, because on Sunday that was okay. And this happens in so many things in life, and so many people lose their shalom bayit over things like that. That in reality, it's really not, as we say, Torah leMoshe miSinai. It's not like the way the Torah was given to Moshe Rabbeinu in Sinai, that it's black and white. Most things are not like that. And it's not black and white, and it's not so clear. And if I'm in the right mood, then it's okay. And if I'm a little tired, then it's not okay. Another thing that we could use as a good example to bring this, to rationalize this, is the following. Did you notice, I don't know if you play games on your phone. I used to play Candy Crush. I don't have it on my phone anymore. Does it come with instructions? No, you have to figure it out. You have to figure it out. You get a brand new phone, $1,000. Does it come with instructions? You have to figure it out. And guess what? The younger the person, they're born with it. I had by me a few weeks ago my grandkids from Lakewood. They have no internet in the house. The parents have dumb phones, old flip phones, no smartphones. And these kids, that's how they grow up, right? Everyone in the community is like that. They came to my house. I have in my guest room, I have a drawer with all the old phones that don't work anymore, that have no service. So when they come, that becomes their toys. And I have a few phones like that. So they charge them and they pretend that they have their phones and they're so cool. And guess what? Those phones, they're probably 15 years old. And suddenly they're texting each other. It has no service on the phone. They even came to my husband and they said, come, Saba, I want to text you. Let me do tak, 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 tak. And they're texting him. Oh, Bluetooth. They figured it out. The oldest was 9. 7 years old, they're doing this. Who taught them? Nobody taught them. They figured it out. What did they figure out? which button to press. And they don't forget that when you press this button, this happens. You know how many times my kids tell me on my pretty laptop that I bought for myself for these Zoom classes, and I have to ask them from time to time, so how do I take a screen picture? And I forget, and they teach me and I forget. But they don't forget. They don't have my computer and they know what to tell me. Why? Because that's important for them. This is something, and this is big. We have to learn when you press each button, what it does. Sometimes it's when you press two buttons together, what reaction it does. When you press this and move that, what does it do? And usually it comes without instructions. You have to figure it out. And we have to do the same thing in our marriage. We have to figure it out. You press the button, you saw what happened? Don't forget. Don't forget. If it was important to you the way it's important for the young people to figure out their phones, then you would do the same thing with your spouse. You would not forget that when you press this button, that was the reaction. I think this is such a good example, and we could really internalize it. Figure it out. When you press which button, what the reaction is. And if it's important for us, when you go on your bank app and you know that if you're going to press certain things, a lot of money might go, it's the same thing with our spouse. We might press on certain buttons that a lot of our happiness will go. And chaval. Just like you wouldn't want to lose money out of your bank because you pressed the wrong button, the same way, you don't want to press the wrong buttons and lose a chunk of your life, a few hours, a few days, that instead of being happy days, joyous days, they become bitter and miserable. Why? Because we pressed the wrong button. And we might say, I didn't know that would be the reaction. Why does he react that way? He always, and the best one, he always does this. She always, okay, so if he always, you know already, so why are you doing it again? If she always, so now you know, so why are you doing it again? When we get a new phone, how many of us go take the phone to someone to make the settings the way the old phone was because we want something that we're used to? Or do we adjust ourselves to the new phone? We adjust ourselves to the new phone, right? The same thing we should do with our spouse. He's not like my father, not like my mother. Okay, but this is my new partner. And if I want to get the best life possible out of this life, and this is my partner, I should learn which buttons to press and which not to. I think it's a very good piece of advice that if we internalize it, it will make a huge difference in our life. And I don't know about you ladies, but for me, pieces like this completely change me, and that's it. I become a new person. I hope it will do that for you too. Okay, so remember, let's pay attention to the reaction of which button. And remember that sometimes there are things that we think would be good, and then we see it was not good. So it's okay. So now you learned that it was not good. You thought that if you press the button on the left, it will erase, but then you saw it didn't erase. So, okay, so now you learned that it did not erase. Like the example we said before, for one woman, her husband comes and says, how was your day? And he's so nice and caring. And for the other one, he's controlling. So it depends. And sometimes, you know what, to the same woman, one day it might be nice and the other day it's not, just like the stepping on the bug. Sometimes one can say something and the spouse laughs and thinks it's a nice joke, and other days it's just annoying and corny. And that's how we are. So just let's not do things too heavy, become a little easier, not make such a big deal when it has to do with us. Remember that we change, remember that our spouse changes, but more important than all, get to know the buttons. Get to know the buttons. Any questions? Ooh, we went late. Any questions? No? Okay. So we'll stop and we will continue. You know what? Actually, I see that there are a couple more examples. No, we'll stop here. It's okay. We'll continue next week with Bezrat Hashem. Good night. Shabbat Shalom. Thank you all for coming.
Night.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
Shabbat
Shabbat
Shalom.
Shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Keeping your cameras on. You really, everyone should thank them, because when I look at faces, that's when I come up with better examples and whatever. If I look at myself, it doesn't. So thank you, everyone.
Thank
Thank you so much. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Good night.